Who's around?
Madam Chair, we're live.
Okay, thank you. At 5:01, I will call to order the Finance Committee for September 5th, 2023. And if we could get a roll call, please.
Certainly. Counselor Cassett. Here. Counselor Lindell.
She's here, but she's not in the chamber yet, so.
Okay. Counselor Rivera.
Here.
Counselor Villarreal.
Present.
Chair Romero Worth.
I am here. All right. Do we have changes to the agenda from staff?
Madam Chair, no changes from staff.
Okay, changes from the committee? And if not, is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for this evening. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That motion passes. On the consent agenda, we have a number of things that have been pulled tonight. Maybe Director Oster, do you want to go through those?
Certainly, Madam Chair. The items that have been pulled from this evening's agenda are item B as in boy, D as in dog, G, H, I, L, and N as in Nancy.
Okay, and is there anything else? Yes. Do you want to repeat those one more time, please?
Sure, absolutely. B as in boy, D as in dog, G, H, I, L, and N as in Nancy.
And if there's nothing else, is there a motion?
Move to approve as amended.
Second. Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That motion passes. We are on to presentations. We have an audit update and overview from Director Oster, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Finance Committee members. We are continuing our progress on the FY22 audit. We are starting the sampling phase of the audit, which is exciting. That's what we call substantive test work, where they provide us with lists of transactions and we provide supporting documentation about those transactions. We received samples yesterday for the P card and travel, and we're continuing to work on gathering our prepared by client items and answering questions. We have a quarterly update due to the state auditor's office next week. Those are due every 3 months. On September 15th is the next one. So we're working on preparing that with Carr Riggs Ingram, our external auditor. And I'm pleased to report that we have 2 applicants for the accounting officer position. We've been recruiting for that position since Ricky Bejarano left that position at the end of December, and we haven't had a lot of interest. So it's great news that we have 2 applicants, and I will be scheduling interviews with them hopefully this week. And I'm encouraged that we may be able to fill that position. So, Madam Chair, those are my updates for this evening.
Great, thank you. Questions from the committee? Okay, we will dive into our consent agenda. The first item that was removed is item B, which is a request for approval of the auction disposal list for the New Mexico annual statewide auction on October 21st, 2023, with the delegation of title signing authority going to the Chief Procurement Officer or their designee. And we have Alexis Lotero, who's the Assistant Finance Director, and you have somebody else with you. Perhaps you can introduce. Okay, and can you tell me your last name again? You guys are going to have to really talk into the mic, otherwise people on Zoom can't hear you and I can barely hear you.
How was that?
That's better, but I'm so sorry. You can also, I'm sorry, tall people, that mic is not friendly
Sorry,
to.
my tallness.
I'm not. Tell me your last name again.
Full name is Scott Gunter and Gunter.
Gunter. Okay, thank you. All right, I believe Councilor Cassett, Councilwoman Villarreal, you pulled this item. Who wants to dive in?
I'll get going. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here. I just have a couple quick questions around this, process. Obviously with the cars last time, it's a little bit more straightforward. They've, run their life here at the city. But we do have some, interesting items that I'm curious about. If we have the ability to donate any of these, do things get donated? I know that we have some issues there, as well as have all of these things been used. So I'm looking at like the used hockey skates and figure skates. And so one thing that really comes to mind for me is we know that there are kids that the ICE community really makes an effort to make sure that they can access ICE activities, even if they don't have the money. And these seem like something that if they still have usable life in them, that if we would be able to provide them. But I'm not sure what the rules and regulations are. So I'd love to hear more there.
Council Cassett, councilors. I hope everybody's doing well this evening. Those particular items were obviously from the Geneva Chavez Center, and I was just contacted on those and just said that we'd like to have those go to auction. To answer your question directly, yes, we can go ahead and have those distributed in another fashion other than an auction, but they were, I guess the call went out for items that each division and or department wanted to auction, and those came up from the Chavez Center. So other than that, I haven't done anything to reach out to any other community members to see if they might have an interest, but that is a valid, if we wanted to donate them or repurpose them, all these items on this are available to do that.
And how would we go about that process of looking into this? I mean, I understand that for some of our cars, the finance piece is important, but for things like figure skates, I imagine that the fiscal impact of us donating versus auctioning can't be too high. So how would we go about looking at some of these pieces that we might want to see if there are community partners that could really utilize those?
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett,
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Is that
yeah,
better?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm sorry. We're dependent. We put out a request. Anything you want to go to auction, please provide it to us. Beyond that, we don't really make a judgment call. So we would have to get back with the department and ask them if there's another, if they are aware of, I don't know, if there's a group we could give it to, or what other avenue we want to go down with this particular item.
Okay. When is the auction taking place again?
The auction, Council Cassett, the auction will be on October 21st.
Okay.
And the drop off dates will be
I know. I apologize. You told
the
us this.
9th and basically the 9th of October to the 17th of October.
Okay.
But the actual auction itself will happen on the 21st on
Okay.
a Saturday.
Okay. Yeah. There were just a couple of other items on here, and I guess I can really go through offline with these, but it is good to know that there might be some other avenues and how we weigh those, because I do see some opportunities for
Yes, ma'am.
community partners that we might want to see if we can work with them on some of these items. So, and then the other question is, have all of these items been used in some capacity? So for example, we have like a pallet of basketball court backboards. Are these brand new? Have they, I guess I'm concerned about, did we purchase something and then not utilize it? Because I would want to know about that.
Council said, councilors, to my knowledge, these are all items that have used their life and they're ready to go to be disposed of in another manner. So
Okay.
I don't have any reason not to believe that there would be items that are brand new here.
Okay, great. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Great. And just before I turn it over to Councilwoman Villarreal, so I notice here there's some bikes that are Scott's, which is a good bike. Have we looked at anything else for them?
Madam Chair, councilors, as we mentioned earlier, that we just sent the list out
Okay.
for disposal. These are the responses that we did get from the police department. And yes, they are good bikes. Again, if there is a repurposing, we do have that as an option. If there are particular items that you would like us to investigate and see how they could be repurposed, we'd be more than happy to do.
Yeah,
do that.
it seems like that's another one that sort of leaps off as bicycles in this community. And that particular model is, a decent bike.
From what
So,
I understand, yes, ma'am.
yeah, okay. Councilwoman Villarreal, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. I actually had the same questions as Councilwoman Cassett. I think for me, I was wondering if why a lot of the items didn't have dates on the year purchased, which then doesn't tell us if they're ready to be disposed of. Which, I want to say that staff knows when something needs to be, or it's expired and they want to have it be part of the auction. But I guess I'm wondering if it's the need for a shiny new item or if they're actually not usable. So if it sounds like you don't do an assessment of that and the dates of the year purchased isn't on there either. So can you say more about that?
Counselor Villarreal, to answer your question directly, no. Again, we've just taken these as raw data. That's the information that we've been given. As you can see, the major assets such as the vehicles do have the dates associated with them. So from what I understood, this was all, pretty much, used, there are obviously other items that are on there, but this is used office equipment, tables, chairs, obviously some other items that are unique. But it was my understanding these have all kind of used their life as an item. So, but there are, it was just brought to my attention that there may be something with the anti-donation clause in terms of how we could donate these items. So that would be something that I would want to investigate a little bit further. As far as the disposal process, this would be the quickest way to get them off of our balance, off of our asset sheets. And a lot of these are just, I don't even know if they're on any type of asset sheet other than they've been purchased, several years ago. And we're trying to,
Right.
clean up space.
And do you all ask for the date for the items?
No, ma'am, I have not.
Oh, that's not one of the criteria when we ask staff about items to put on the list.
The only thing we really are dealing with is larger capital assets that, we can identify VIN number or serial number. And we need that information to auction. But as far as the other miscellaneous items, what I want to consider miscellaneous items, no, I have not asked for the dates.
Okay.
But moving forward, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I think also it's expedient, right? We're not necessarily looking for, if it's good and it's useful, we shouldn't be selling it, right? To ask, if they're giving us 5 desks, can you figure out when you bought that desk? Might be, I don't want to discourage the departments from auctioning off things they're obviously not using. And I know that we're always suffering from a shortage of space. But if that's what we need to do going forward, we can figure out a way to do it.
I think it's more, maybe not necessarily the date because they might not be able to find that information, but I think it's more like a criteria to determine why it's not usable. If there's certain things that they have to follow, I think we were talking about how police have a certain time frame that they have to release vehicles.
Counselor Villarreal, yes. What's different about this disposal is particularly with the vehicles and the large capital assets is we're having all those items brought down to fleet. And what is happening there is David Jaramillo and his crew are going to be evaluating those vehicles to determine whether or not they can be repurposed or not within the city. So that is something that's a little bit different and has shifted from the last auction. So those types of items, yes, are being reevaluated. As far as the desk or some of the other items on there, not really an evaluation
Yeah.
component. It was just one of those things where they want to get rid of the desk, as for example, some of the items that are just around offices. So that's really what they were making space. So was the intent.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think big items, equipment that's pricey, we should do an evaluation to make sure that we can't
And
repurpose it.
yes, ma'am, that's what
Yeah.
we're doing.
Great. Okay. And yeah, I agree with my colleague about items. I don't know how that works with anti-donation, so, but it seems like if there's items that could be used that, not just the skates, I think there was even bike racks and the bikes that, yeah. So I guess if there's a way you could just look into that possibility, that would be good.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And so in terms of like desks and desk chairs, I mean, so maybe one department can't use, and I know we get emails periodically where people say, hey, I've got 3 filing cabinets. Anybody want them? And then within actually minutes, you get a follow-up email saying filing cabinets are gone. Does that kind of thing happen with, say, some like cars are a different deal completely, but I mean, because you do have desk chairs and desks, has any attempt been made to see if another department can use it?
Madam Chair, not to that extent of what you're talking about. I believe if we really wanted to, we could distribute this disposal list to different departments and see if there was anything that might find an interest in taking off this disposal list, and we can still do that. It's just that, the assumption was made that that particular department doesn't necessarily have a use for it, and we need to dispose of it in a proper manner, or an authorized, disposal. Like I said, we'd be more than happy to distribute this, other than the large capital assets and the vehicles, to dispose of. There may very well be offices that would like to utilize that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Those items.
just we've got filing cabinets, one's wood, one's metal. Seems like, we ought to see if they can be repurposed in another department, or at least an attempt made. So I mean, I get that there's stuff we need to get rid of, but again, if somebody somewhere in city government would find these to be useful, I think we should.
Madam Chair, would you like me to separate the E's and the V's? The E's are the equipment and the V's are the vehicles, and separate those, and then perhaps send a email out to.
Yeah, I'd like the email that we get periodically when people have a one-off, they have, I got a filing cabinet, or I've got a desk, or I've got I don't know, I'd just be curious. I don't want to create a whole bunch of extra work for you, but I also don't want to give away something that we can utilize.
So Madam Chair, I think in that case, what perhaps we should do is send an email to the departments and say, please verify that you have offered this to the city as a whole, because like we get those emails all day. The other thing I was just occurred to me is, like, especially with the bicycle and the skates, might give a kid an opportunity to buy a bike that they could not normally afford.
Right.
Right. Because this is open to the public, and we
Right.
had a really good turnout at the last auction. So
Right.
that's a thought too.
Right. Well, and I mean, if that's, if that's true, that's true. But
Yeah.
also if if we have a nonprofit that could utilize 4 bikes and they'd be willing to pay something
Yeah.
for it, so that we don't go afoul of anti-donation, and,
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
Scott
we were-
bike, you can't, those are expensive
Yeah,
bikes.
we're just trying to, get from point A to point B. We've been, I know that the other thing we have to tackle eventually is all the stuff that's stored at Midtown. Right.
Mhm.
We're just trying to clear up
Right.
space, and I know we put a bunch of stuff out in the hall, then went nowhere. So,
Yeah.
it's,
Okay, well, I know this isn't easy work. This is hard work. Always in terms of getting rid of stuff. But I just, seems like we want to make sure, I think, that it's stuff we really can't use anymore, or it's beyond its useful life.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to point out, a couple points here. The intent of the last auction was to get rid of the large capital assets, which we did. We did have some holdovers from that auction that for one reason or another did not get approved on the last disposal list. So this is kind of a catch up on some of the large vehicles, other capital assets that we have along with that. The intent of this auction, if I understand correctly, was to get rid of those assets and then go back in and get rid of these accessories, what I want to call them, furniture, equipment, other stuff like that. And that was the intent of what this auction is entitled, what we want it to be. So I just want to state that
Okay.
as well.
All right. Other questions from the committee? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there further discussion, Counselor Cassett?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure out where to go with this, because I would like to, go, as we discussed, kind of go through some of these lists and see what the alternative is. So I do get nervous on moving it forward to governing body before there's an opportunity to do that. Although I do, wouldn't want to hold this up to the point where the schedule is compromised for those things that we actually do want to send to auction by the 21st.
The auction's on the 21st of
Right.
October. We start bringing items down on the 9th of October.
To the 9th, to the, I think you said the 17th, maybe.
But
Right.
you can work on this,
Yeah.
these items, even as we move it through the process, right? So some of these items may come off by the time.
So we can make those, okay. Yeah, I'm willing to move it forward. But I'll be in touch. Probably in conjunction with these two. That was all.
Okay, yes, Counselor Rivera.
Just a quick question. So all these are coming from different departments and trying to figure out who's donating what, and then what department might want it and want to go look and see if it's something they could use. Couldn't they just go to the auction and when it's all dropped off and say, hey, we can use this stuff, and then pull it back?
Counselor Rivera, yes and no. This is a little bit different than the auction that we had last time because we were running that auction. There is a process that the auctioneer needs to go through to get it ready for auction. But in theory, yes, we could pull those items once they get down to the auction lot. So yes, is that a little more difficult to do? Yes, but in theory, it could be done.
It's got to be a little easier than figuring out which department is donating and then who might want it. And
Agreed. I'm not, there's some advantages to doing that. It's just that logistically, like I said, we could send this off and see see if there's any interest from any of the other departments, like segregate the list just to the equipment and send that out and see if there's any interest in that. So, and we have where the departments that are requesting to have this disposed of. So. Okay.
all right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I think it'd be great if maybe just taking a look. I mean, I'm also, there's a golf cart on here. I just wonder if we don't have somewhere where that could be utilized, and maybe not on a golf course, but it's functional enough to move somebody around a big area that we have that just provides transportation. So, maybe a Midtown. So anyway, I just, if you could maybe give a look and see what we might salvage that's still usable by the city itself.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I think, do we need a roll call now then? I think we do, right?
Yes, Madam Chair. Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight.
All
right.
Good evening.
You too. We are on to item D, as in dog. Request for approval of professional service agreement with Community Solutions DBA, which is doing business as Vincent's Legacy LLC for operations of Santa Fe Suites in the total amount of $255,000 through June 30th, 2024. And we have Brittany Rodriguez with Youth and Family Services, and we also have Julie Sanchez. So, and I believe Counselor Lindell, you pulled this item?
I did. Thank you. Hi, thanks for being here. Do we have any of the quarterly reports from this group?
I believe we do. This contract came from affordable housing, so I think Cody is able to speak to that if that's okay with you, Counselor.
Hi, Counselor Lindell. Yes, we do. We are currently managing a contract similar to the one that they're trying to set up. It's through our CARES Act, CDBG, CV, and it's for the pretty much exact same scope of work. We do have quarterlies on those.
So all the quarterlies are up to date?
Yeah, up until the end of last fiscal year.
What kind of information do we get from those quarterly reports?
Demographic information, primarily income certification, that kind of thing.
What's the term that a person can live there?
It's permanent supportive housing, so as long as they need, there's no term limit.
Do we have any qualifications of, I mean, are there any qualifiers for people being able to stay permanently?
I guess income for the 80, I believe 82 units that they have, and I think that's probably up to 80% area median income.
No other
And abiding by the terms of the lease.
have we, you may not know this, have we had people that we have terminated from the program?
I can't speak super accurately to that, but I think there have been a couple evictions.
And we supply other services over there, correct?
St. Elizabeth's is the local partner, and they provide all the case management and social working services and referrals to whatever wraparound services the tenants need.
Okay. That's all I have.
Other questions from the committee? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve this item. Director Oster, can we get a roll call, please?
Certainly. Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell.
Yeah.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we are on, sorry, lost my agenda. We are on to item G, as in goat. Request for approval of construction contract with CF Padilla LLC for capital improvements program project number 33721, Nichols Dam Outlet Works Rehabilitation, in the total amount of $16,967,506.22 through April 22nd, 2025. And we have John Delmar, Water Division Engineer Supervisor, with us, and Councilor Lindell, I believe you pulled this item.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here, Mr. Delmar. I have really specific questions on this, but it just seems proper to me that any item that's $17 million needs to be pulled off from the consent agenda, and we should probably have a little conversation about it. So maybe you would, I know a lot of it's in our packet, but the public doesn't necessarily read our packets. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the necessity for this project, the scope of work, the time frame, and just give us some basic info on why we're being asked to spend $17 million on a project.
Okay. Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, I'd be happy to give a little summary of the project. I can also point out that 3 weeks ago, we had our public works, public utilities, where we actually paid a visit to the dam, and I'd be happy to offer further visits if anybody's interested. I also have a couple handouts with me from that time that I'd be happy to distribute after this that gives more kind of an overview of the project.
That'd be great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and in fact, I could give those to you now if you would like to follow through it. Yeah, okay. Okay, so the primary driver for this project was what we called a semi-qualitative risk analysis that was performed on our dam. And that analysis, which the city funded and basically hired an engineering firm to do, identified a potential failure mode in the dam, which is not uncommon for earthen dams from this era and this type of construction. And that potential failure mode, even though it's a very low probability because it's a reservoir above downtown Santa Fe, would have very high consequences. So when that analysis was released, and the state engineer also got copies of that report, they downgraded the condition of the dam from satisfactory to poor, which basically put the onus on the water division to make repairs to that condition. So the primary driver for the project back in 2019 was that potential failure mode. That basically has to do with the outlet, we call it the outlet conduit, which is the way the water leaves the reservoir through the dam and then to the lower Santa Fe River. That conduit has basically construction cracks in the concrete that actually allow water to flow from the dam into that conduit because it's essentially under pressure from the outside. And that water that can flow in through those cracks can also carry material with it. A little bit of sand, a little bit of clay. And if too much of that material leaves the dam, it creates voids or basically pockets of water along that conduit, which can then find ways around that conduit and out of the dam. So it becomes sort of a leak, and then in the most extreme case, it can cause a failure of the dam. These are things that can be monitored. We do monitor for them. They are not high probability, they're very low probability, but they require action. So once that determination was made, the dam was downgraded, we started the design. And as with infrastructure of this type, it requires draining the reservoir, putting this dam, which is the last water storage before our Canyon Road water treatment plant, basically at a very limited service for an extended period of time. You try to do as much as you can when you have these projects. So we've added to it both the repair of that outlet conduit, which basically involves lining it with a plastic liner and then surrounding that with concrete. We've added improvements to the intake structure itself, which is the way the water gets from the reservoir into that outlet conduit and then to the river, and it gets divided to the acequia users, to the Canyon Road water treatment plant, the Living River. So we've added improvements which give us operational advantages and also solves some limitations that we had with our existing, what we call the outlet works. And so we're improving the outlet works, which is, if you look at the photo, it's basically that little cylindrical column that goes down into the dam. That's where the water enters into pipes and flows out through the dam. So we're making improvements there. Those improvements will give us longer life to that infrastructure, repair some design deficiencies, and also give us operational capabilities that we don't currently have, including higher flow rates through the dam, which this year we found we had real limitations, and we had so much snow in the watershed that it was really hard to pass enough water through our system with the existing infrastructure that we have. And when you can't pass enough, you end up over the spillway, which is okay. That's what the spillway is for, but you'd rather have control over it as long as you can, because once you hit the spillway, you really no longer have control over how much water leaves the dam. We also have an outlet structure that measures and controls the flow out in a much more operationally efficient way, and gives us a lot more control over what water is going to the acequias, what's going to the Canyon Road. We'll have much better accounting. And after it passes through the dam, we're also going to make a connection to the new, we call it the raw water line, which basically is a pipe in the far reaches of Upper Canyon Road below Nichols Dam that will take that water directly to the Canyon Road water treatment plant. So then it will tie into the plant. And I guess the final option, or the final item of scope, would be a small structure on the shoulder of the dam, which provides hydraulic equipment and also an aeration system that is put into Nichols that will allow us to aerate the dam and improve water quality going to the Canyon Road treatment plant. So that's kind of in a nutshell, I guess that's our project.
Thank you. Is this the same reservoir that we worked on not that many years ago?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, we have two reservoirs in the watershed above Santa Fe. This is the one closest to town. It's just about a half a mile above the Autobahn and the Canyon Road water treatment plant. And yes, the work that was done, I think it finished in 2017, was actually to the intake structures. And we found some deficiencies in that design, which are being, I guess you would say, litigated. We're not to the point of, any sort of true litigation, but we have a process in place to go back and evaluate that design. What went wrong? We're fixing the problems, but at the same time, we're addressing the fact that there were deficiencies to begin with.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that was a pretty big project. How many millions was that project? Do you remember?
That was before my time, and I don't know the cost, but the work was done on both reservoirs, both dams, Nichols and McClure. And we intend to take, after we finish Nichols, we have to go do the same thing at McClure, which is several miles above Nichols. It'll be a simpler project, but it'll address the same failure mode and makes the same kinds of corrections to the intake structures.
It's disappointing that we just finished that project in 2017 and we've got failures in it.
Yeah.
So we only got one bidder on this. When we put this project together, did we even have any idea if we were looking at a $5 million, $10 million, $15 million project?
Yeah, we had an engineer's estimate that was about a year to 18 months prior, and quite a bit happened with inflation, supply chain, things that drove up costs, but we were expecting it to be a $15 to $20 million project based on that engineer's estimate.
Okay. And the time frame, when will this start?
That's a really good question. The work is very, the schedule is very much driven by operations and seasons. You have to have the dam in a safe operating mode for the spring runoff. During the spring runoff, we want to be treating and passing as much water through the dam as we can. So right now, the schedule is sort of, there's a conflict between some long lead time items that we intend to order as soon as we have a notice to proceed, which puts us into middle of next summer. Ideally, we'd like to do the work where we actually drain the dam and do some major structural work on the dam itself next fall. But if some of those long lead time items are pushed beyond that, we'll have to wait until the next fall. So it's going to be ideally fall of 2024, but potentially fall of 2025 before the main work is done. And then we expect to finish in that following spring.
Is this the reservoir that used to have the pipe coming out of the middle of it, that people used to go in a rowboat out into the middle of it and go down that pipe, which I have no idea why anybody would ever do that?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Well, I'm glad we don't have that pipe anymore. Okay, thank you for the explanation. I didn't really have specific questions about this. I just thought that a $17 million project deserved a conversation. Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the thorough presentation, John. Just one question about the contractor. Have we worked with CF Padilla LLC before on any major infrastructure projects?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, we have not. They, as Councilor Lindell pointed out, they were the only bidder. We had several in the running until the very last minute. But I will say that we have had a good number of conversations with them that we feel like we really sort of got a lot more confidence in them every time we talk to them. They're a local firm. They're based south of Albuquerque. It's a Native American owned firm. And I feel really good about them. I feel like they're really want to prove themselves with this project. And we have contacted some references and others who have worked with them and gotten good recommendations from them.
Great.
For them.
That's good to know. Have they worked on a project of this size, I guess?
This will be their largest project to date. They have worked on similar types of projects, several dams, outlet conduits, the same kind of work we're doing, but this will be the single largest contract based on my understanding that the company has had.
Okay. And do you remember who the contract was for the project that we were referring to that had failures? Do you know who the contractor was for that?
I believe RMCI was one of the prime contractors, and then there were, I think Weaver was doing construction management and Santa Fe Engineering was doing engineering. So we have a similar team, new players, but we have construction management, engineering services, all of those lined up for this project.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's a big undertaking. So hopefully all of the pieces will come together and the project the dam outlet rehabilitation will be successful. So thank you. Good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? I just have one. So you said that this firm has done I can't remember exactly the words you said, that you think or you thought or I don't know, I felt like you hedged a little bit about similar work, smaller scale. I assume that you've checked into some of these things that they've done to see that they're familiar with this kind of work.
Yes, Madam Chair. They have done work of lining outlet conduits, which is the big portion of the safety work. I think what makes this project really escalate in size and cost are all the different things. We're adding basically a lot of unrelated things are all being put together. So they've done individually the main, the really critical tasks they have done. And they've proven themselves to be at least giving us confidence that they are well qualified to do all of the additional work and especially the really critical aspects of the project.
Okay, that's a better endorsement. I can't remember what words you use, but anyway, we'll let it go. All right, do we have a motion on this? I don't think we do. Motion?
Move to approve.
Motion and a second to approve this item. Is there any other questions, more discussion? Ooh. The mic is objecting. All right, can we get a roll call, please, Director Oster?
Certainly, Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, looks like we have some attention to the mic, so we will keep going. All right. We are on to item H. Item H is a request for approval of amendment number 4 to item number 19-0341 with Garson Studios Santa Fe LLC to allow Garson to request all of the 6-month holdover extensions through August 26, 2024. We have Lee Logston, Midtown Asset Development Manager, and Counselor Lindell. I believe you pulled this item.
I did. Thank you. Hi, Lee. What's the maximum holdover date?
August 26, 2024.
So only till next summer. That's all this takes this to.
Yes, Counselor, that's correct.
And does this interfere in any way with our ENA?
It does not. Currently, Garson Studios and the entity we're negotiating with for the ENA plan to effectively combine forces. So Garson Studios activities there, contracts there would kind of be melded into the new overall studio effort.
Do we have up-to-date reporting? I talked to Ms. Oster today, asking if we had up-to-date reporting on the lease with the Garson Studio Group.
Yes, Counselor, Madam Chair and other counselors. Do you mean like what's being occupied now or what they've paid us? Because I do have that available.
Yeah, what they paid.
So the last, I just was delivered a check last Friday before we took off. And this time it was income to the city was $129,976 and some change. And yeah, that, as I said, that was just delivered on Friday and I was able to deposit it today.
What was the billing that our 129 was based on? What was the overall billing?
Sure. Gross license income to Garson was 223,665.71. And again, our portion of that was 129,976.25.
So their portion of it was 90-some thousand.
Yes, correct. 93,689.
Well, I know we have a contract in place. I think that this is a very, very, very generous contract to Garson Studios, that they make off from our property almost what we make off from it. And that when they aren't leased, they really owe us essentially nothing. So they don't pay anything when they don't have business. And so we're extending this for an additional, is it 6 months or is it a full year?
It would be a full year. So Amendment 3 is what provided a mechanism for them to request the holdover extensions. And at the time Amendment 3 was passed, there were a total of, or I'm sorry, getting my notes messed up here. I'm sorry, it was Amendment 2 that created a mechanism for them to extend for up to 2 full years in 6-month increments. Amendment 3 is where they actually requested 2 of those extensions or holdovers, they're called, in the lease, with the option to extend for the final 2, which would take you through August 26 next year. So really what they're doing here in Amendment 4 is the wording of Amendment 3 was that he had to have a licensee who could go all the way out to August next year in order to request them. What we're asking for now with Amendment 4 is to give Garson Studios the ability to go ahead and count on those 2 extensions without necessarily having a license in place. And that is largely so he can secure a future license.
Did we ever have any consideration of renegotiating the terms?
We did not in this case. I would say 2 reasons behind that, because we did get the appraisal done about, I think that was a year plus ago, actually in January of this year, we did raise his rates based on an appraisal process. So that was fairly fresh. And then the other reason is that we expect the DDA process, development disposition agreement process for the studio RFP to kind of come relatively soon and certainly before August 24. So no, having raised his rates in the recent future and recent past and with the future in mind, we did not renegotiate this time.
How did an appraisal determine our lease rates on this? I don't see how the 2 of those things tie in together. And here's the thing, if you don't know, it's okay to say you don't know.
Well, I don't have a good answer for you, not having anticipated that. That was a public process that was, approved. It's certainly something I can go back and look into and come back before we get to council and answer you better.
I just don't see how property appraisal really affects that lease rate, but we aren't renegotiating it, so I don't see the purpose in spending time on it. I probably would have been inclined to look through the numbers and see if it would have been appropriate to renegotiate, because I've said this in the past, it's nothing new, that I think that this is a lease that certainly favors the leasee and that it's not very advantageous to the city. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Is there a motion?
I'd like to move to approve.
Second. Motion and a second to approve this item. Is there further discussion or questions? Director Oster, can you call the roll?
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we are on to item I, request for approval for a lease agreement with GC Bendito 4 LLC to continue to operate a radio tower antenna at the former Buckman Road landfill. We have a new addition. I have Terry Lease on my agenda, but we have Director Rich Brown with us. And I believe Councilwoman Villarreal, you pulled this item. I believe Councilor Cassett has questions, and there may be additional questions from other committee members. So Councilwoman Villarreal, you want to start?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Greetings.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Councilor
Director.
Riel, Mr. Lease could not make it tonight, so I'm hoping that I can answer your questions regarding the lease.
Thanks for joining us, Director Brown. I guess I'm just curious about this partnership with GC Bendito 4. And they have a tower, they have a radio tower antenna. It sounds like it's been there since 1995. Was that the same owner?
That's correct. The Bendito is the LLC or DBA for the Gonzalez family radio system. It's
Oh,
Case Wabe.
got it. That makes sense. So I guess I'm curious about the lease, and it doesn't look like from at least this agreement if we've ever increased the amount. So it's a monthly base rent of 300. And so each year is 3,600. And then each subsequent year, it escalates by 2%. And I'm curious if it's always been the case, that same formula, that same amount, an increase since 1995.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, it has not. It was originally, I think, $2,000 per year. And back in we've been working on this for a while. So I think back in 2022, they did an appraisal, and the appraisal came back for that amount. It came out 3,600. I think that was what the total number is. This is just a radio tower. It looks like a wired bow tie at the top of the tower, and it doesn't include any cellular service. That's why it's so low.
Mm.
If it had cellular service and multi-communications, it would be much, much higher, but it's just a tower with a radio on it.
So a tower with the radio on it, and no other companies can attach to it.
No other companies can sublease. They can approach us about a sublease, but it'll
Uh-huh.
change their lease amount.
Got it. So right now, what is it used for then?
It's an AM tower, and I think they get a FM transmission, but I think it's AM only.
Got
But
it.
you can see it on Buckman Road
Mhm.
between 599 and Casa Solana.
And so the lease or the appraisal is based on the footprint it's on, not necessarily anything
correct.
related to the height or.
Yes. Madam Chair, Councilor Rial, it is a tower located on a landfill site, and it's for the parcel that is used for the tower, because the tower has a field if it fell over.
Got
So it's that parcel, just for that parcel. There's a lot more land there for us, but it's all landfill site,
Got it.
which can't be developed on.
Right. So, and there's no other infrastructure on there, other towers it's
I'm
just
sure,
that.
no, there isn't. And if the city wants to use it for some purpose, we could use the remaining landfill site that's there.
Got it. But not for development. It's not in any way, shape or form
Yeah.
because it was a former landfill
Correct.
to be able to do any
Yeah.
development.
Cannot
Okay.
be used for development.
All right. That answers my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Counselor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I think that Councilman Villarreal skirted around my question, probably very similar answers. You know, it's whatever. No, in a good way. You've provided context for, anyway. So the appraisal was done in 2021. I saw over 2 years ago, and just curious about the time frame of the appraisal and how valid that would still be. Obviously, your further descriptions of it show that there really isn't a lot to it, but I was curious about using an appraisal that's over 2 years at this time.
I don't know the answer specifically to that question, but I think that the appraisal was based upon, it is a very unique tower. There's really none. I think the appraisals actually went out to as far as Tennessee, because there's no parcel of land that just has a radio tower on it. Everything has Verizon, Infinity, and all the different broadband companies on it. And this just has a tower and a radio, like bow tie wires on it. So,
All right, that was it. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this item. Director Oster, can you do a roll call, please?
Counselor Cassidy,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. We
Thanks.
are Cruising along, I believe we are on to item L. Request for approval of contract change order number 1 to services agreement item 21-0552 with Bradbury Stam Construction, Inc. in the total amount of $1,677,297.56, including New Mexico gross receipts tax and extension of the contract term to March 2024 for unanticipated costs for the construction at Santa Fe Regional Airport. And we have our airport manager with us this evening. Welcome. And I believe Councilwoman Villarreal, you called this item, you pulled this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Harris, for joining us. I think for this item, it was a little frustrating for me because it appeared from the memo that the reason why we have these unanticipated costs that will increase the cost in contract work with Bradbury is because another contractor, Molson Corbin, did not catch certain infrastructure issues ahead of time. So basically it's like a snowball effect. If something's not caught by another contractor, it then raises the costs for another contractor. And so I was curious if maybe you could describe, in your opinion, about if that's maybe the right way to view this, and what were the kind of limitations to hold the first contractor accountable for that?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Villarreal. A project of this magnitude requires a lot of planning. A part of the planning is the investigation work. The airport was opened in 1945 or something, way long time ago. So it was first opened as a Army airfield, I believe, or an Air Force. It was opened up as a military base. So there's a lot of infrastructure where we can't find the plans for. So the plans were to grade the parking lot down to a flat area all the way through, so it's not so hilly and it's paved. And so once they started grading and digging, they started finding a lot of sewer lines, water lines, and electrical utilities and everything. Usually there's plans somewhere that shows you where everything is. And to my knowledge, there isn't one. After the military took over, the county was over the airport, and then finally the city of Santa Fe. And somewhere in all those transitions, a lot of the planning for the underground utilities, they're just nowhere to be found. So as a part of the planning, you have to find out where everything is before you make a plan. And since there was no plans, they had to make a plan based off of what they knew. So once they started digging, they found the sewer lines. They had to redesign. Okay, the sewer lines are 3 feet from the top. We need to lower them. And I think we had to lower them 8 feet total to make the weight requirements for trucks and everything. And then we started finding telephone lines, abandoned sewer lines. All this stuff can collapse under the weight of the vehicles today. So all that had to be replanned, redesigned, and that process took extra time. And we finally got everything planned and approved. And then that's a part of the change order for the term of the project.
That's helpful. And so Molson Corbin they used what they had in terms of old plans from the airport and did like a best judgment kind of.
I believe that's
Scenario.
what happened, Counselor.
Okay. And then you said, so is this can you remind me again where this funding source, this additional amount is coming from again?
So the additional amount, New Mexico Department of Transportation Aviation Division, it's a part of the $4 million grant that was approved by governing body last year. And a lot of people have concerns about where that money comes from. So I'd like to clear that up as well. So the New Mexico State Aviation grants come from the sales of fuel. So every gallon sold, it's taxed. And then that tax money goes to the state of New Mexico, and then it's appropriated in the annual state budget. So it's not really everyone's tax dollars, it's more the aviation industry. And the FAA likes to say aviation pays for aviation. And that's an example of how it pays for itself.
So sale of fuel for specific to the aviation.
Yes, Counselor. So jet fuel and avgas.
Got it. That's helpful. Thank you for that info. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Harris.
Other questions from the committee? Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve this item. Can we get a roll call? Director Oster, please.
Certainly. Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, the last item that was pulled from tonight's consent agenda is a resolution reconvening the Community Health and Safety Task Force for a single meeting for the purpose of adopting the task force's final report and recommendations. We have Julie Sanchez here this evening with the Youth and Family Services. She's the Division Director. Counselor Lindell, I believe you pulled this item. Welcome, Director Sanchez.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a few questions on this. This was supposed to be completed at the end of June? Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Counselor Lindell, that's correct.
So between January and June, how many meetings were held?
Madam Chair, Counselor Lindell, I believe the task force meets every 2 weeks. So between 6 months, I have to do some basic math here.
12 times?
Roughly, I would say about 12 times between.
I'm just a little distressed that we have to extend this with one more meeting and one more budget item. For one more meeting, we have to pay the facilitator $2,500.
Madam Chair, Counselor Lindell, that's correct.
What's the hourly rate?
The hourly rate of the consultant is $125 an hour, and currently she's budgeted at about 18 or so hours
For
to
a
support
last meeting?
the task force's work.
That's actually not accurate. The 2,500 is for the time frame now until the extension to have this meeting and also to be able to present to the governing body when we get to that point. But that 2,500 is not for one meeting. She's been continuously facilitating, even though our meeting timeframe has ended at the end of June. And we were delayed, if you can elaborate. I mean, the reason why we're delayed here is because of that contract with UNM and wanting to complete the listening sessions and the community outreach. So all of that pushed us like 6 months out and a delay that we didn't want because there was a lot of work still that we wanted to do. So in between that time that we were still completing the listening sessions and the community engagement, we also had meetings during this 6-month period, and it was a lot more of like learning sessions for the task force. So we didn't meet every single month because of the legislative session. So there were times that the regular meetings didn't occur.
So who is overseeing the contract with UNM?
Madam Chair, Counselor Lindell, I'm currently overseeing that contract.
Why did it get so behind?
So-
Did we not have terms on it with them?
Madam Chair, Counselor Lindell, I got brought into the process about 6 months after it should have been executed. We had new staff on board who didn't quite understand the contracting process. Plus there was negotiations going back and forth with UNM around the scope of their contract. And we wanted to make sure that as the city, we were getting the best deal that we were on the services that were going to be rendered. And so it took us, when I got involved, it took about 2 months for us to get the contract fully executed. And by then, I think we were in December. And I had just came on board to support the task force that July.
I'm still not clear. How much have we paid the facilitator at this point?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, I think we're roughly at about close to maybe 20,000 at this point, but I'd have to double check the numbers.
20,000? So we need over 10% more for a last meeting?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, that would be the total. So the total would be 20,000 since we, I believe, brought her on contract.
I'm still not clear what we're paying someone $2,500 for.
So Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, the contractor right now is going to be responsible for taking all the minutes, assisting with the agenda setting, debriefing, coordinating, writing the actual recommendations and report, as well as essentially herding the cats of the task force and making sure we all stay on task. It's a huge lift. And this is just one of the initiatives my office has taken on. And so it's really great to actually have that support because I couldn't, and neither can the co-chairs do it alone.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just not at all clear why we're 3 months out and for one meeting that we need to have the facilitator. I guess I would think that as things went along, there would have been progress reports and all kinds of reports did come to us. But you know what? It's $25, $2,500. I know it's not a lot of money, but it just seems like this is, I'm not clear on why this has happened the way that it has.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Rivera.
Thank you. I'll try to shed some light on it, but since the UNM contract was held up between the attorneys from both parties, it didn't get executed and really followed up on until Julie started. And then she was able to get the contract through when she did. So because the contract was delayed, the information from the public didn't get to the task force until the end of June. So because of that, we didn't have the information that we needed in order to make decisions and recommendations until the end of June when we were supposed to end. So there's still work being done on a daily basis by the facilitator. And in the end, she'll have to make the total presentation to the governing body. So that's the reason for the 2,500. And that's the reason we need one more additional meeting just to capture everything that the task force has done and really give a final approval to what we're going to be presenting to the governing body, the recommendations we're going to be making. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Is there a motion?
For approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve this item. Do we have further discussion? If not, Director Oster, can you call the roll, please?
Councilor Cassidy,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell, Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we are on to action items. We do not have any after that introduction of legislation. I believe Councilwoman Villarreal, you have an item to introduce this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a resolution that is asking for permission to serve alcohol for an inaugural event called the Reds and Greens True Blues Fest that will be held on October 21st, 2023 from 12 to 4:30 at Fort Marcy Park. And as you know, we have a section in our code that requires the adoption of a resolution for the sale and consumption of alcohol for locations on city property.
Okay,
Yes, that's all.
so that item has been introduced formally at the Finance Committee. We do not have an executive session tonight. Matters from staff,
None at this time.
matters from the committee. Matters from the chair. Our next meeting, if I can get my calendar to download, is Monday, September 18th. And that's all we have tonight. We